S.H.Figuarts Berserk Guts Berserker Armor was released on the 30th of September as a regular release and retails for 9,500 yen or $80 before tax and shipping, depending on where you purchase it from and the current currency conversion rate. This one was pretty hard to secure due to the obvious popularity of the character, but I managed to grab my copy from Army right here in Japan. If you missed out on pre-orders, and I know a lot of us did, I've heard Hobby Genki have restocked since its release. If you're in the States, try Big Bad Toy Store, but I'd give Amazon Japan a go if you don't mind paying a little more than its original retail price. So just a disclaimer, I know Berserk and Miura's work is a beloved manga by many around the world and has a passionate following of fans to say the least. I've never read the manga, but was introduced to Berserk through the 1997 anime, which I watch at least once a year. Though it only covers chapters 1 and 2 of the manga, I think it's a fantastic adaptation. Short enough for someone like me who can't really spend too much time watching an entire anime series, but long enough to leave me wanting more. So I'm not the most well-versed when it comes to the Berserk universe, but I did rewatch the anime and did do a little bit of self-study in preparation for this review with the help of YouTube channel Berserker Dude, who I highly recommend if you want a complete retelling of the Berserk timeline. Not that I think that you need to do research for you to enjoy a figure, but I must admit rewatching the anime, going through all the various fan pages and YouTube videos definitely added an extra layer to my enjoyment of this figure. I believe this version of Guts is based on his look from the Millennium Falcon arc, correct me if I'm wrong, or the stress of using the Berserk armor taking its toll on Guts' body, and it's starting to show through the white streaks in his hair, which again, I don't believe he got until this stage of the story. In any case, the figure is a sculpting masterpiece, and if you read the interview that Tamashii put up on their website with the sculptor, you'll know a lot of tender, loving care was put into getting the figure as accurate as possible to the source material. The sculptor received direct feedback from Studio Gaga, Miura's own production company, and everything was sculpted from the body up, like completely naked, without the armor, with each layer of clothing and armor added on sequentially. An interesting read and gives a really good insight into the design choices and mechanics of both Guts and Griffith. Anyway, I'll have a link to the interview in the description. Back to the figure, and you can just tell that every single piece of the figure was sculpted with the utmost attention to detail. You have all the cuts and scarring on his arms, but it also continues into the areas you can't see, like under the shoulder armor. His right arm is all wrapped up with sculpted bandages, with his left arm sporting a mechanical replacement. The pouches have visible stitching, silver detailing on the buckles, and are attached via ball joints on his belt. I feel the armor and cape are kind of their own two separate beasts, with Tamashii opting to go for a pre-cut shape for the cape to simulate all the tears and tatters around the edges. We also get a printed textured detail design on both sides that emulates that gritty, worn-out look of the original art. There's also bendable wire running through the center and around the edges of the cape that gives you options to pose the cape in pretty much any way you'd want. It's two pieces glued together, and the sculptor in the interview emphasized that they didn't want to go with stitching, as having large stitching around the edges would throw off the scaling. It's a little stiff, but once you get it going, I think this was an overall great choice. Now to the armor, which I absolutely love. There's so much sculpted detail with each piece moving independently, attached via ball joints, overlapping the other piece like armor should. I honestly didn't think he had knee joints. Looking at it for the first time, the connection from the thigh armor to the calf section is just so seamless. I love all the little rivets and bolts in every plate, and everything has a grayish dry brush over it to bring out those details even further. The head sculpts, and we get 3 different expressions, are exactly how I imagined the manga would look in 3 dimensions. They've captured the look perfectly. I mean, this looks like Guts at all angles, and I understand that can always be easier said than done, but Tamashii have also managed to reproduce that dark grittiness feel of the manga without going overboard with too much detail. When it comes to a mass-produced figure, there's a fine line between not having enough detail and overdoing it with too much shading, blood, dry brushing, especially when that's the kind of character you're trying to reproduce. You know, like kind of having a custom where it's a gorgeous piece, but because there's so much work gone into it, it kind of sticks out in your collection. I think the facial expressions are that perfect balance of showcasing all that meticulous detail in the hair, teeth, facial features, whilst keeping that factory fresh, mass-produced collectible feel to it, if that makes any sense. And when you turn Guts around, you can also see that iconic brand of sacrifice beautifully done on his neck there. So now that we've talked about the aesthetics, we have to talk about the engineering, and I honestly feel Tamashii were this close to getting it right. If only they could have fixed these two issues, it would have made this figure untouchable. But as soon as I opened this guy up, I knew the shoulders were going to be an issue. I know a lot of people, me included, were worried if the joints were able to hold up the weight of that huge sword of his, but that's not the big issue here. Guts holds the Dragon Slayer pretty well. The joints, on my copy at least, are pretty solid. It's the joints that they've chosen to go with for the shoulders that makes posing this guy so frustrating. It's a hinge joint with a ball going into the shoulder, and whilst the ball and the sockets are nice and tight, maybe a little bit too tight, the two pieces that hinge together pops out way too easily. If only Tamashii used some kind of locking mechanism to keep both pieces together, but as is, the two pieces that make up that joint just pop out every time you try to move the shoulders. They need some sort of cap to hold the two pieces together, and because they've used this kind of joint, similar to your early Revoltech joints, the shoulder looks a little flat when you lift it up and out away from the body. I'm not even going to try and fix the shoulders right now because it takes forever and is way too frustrating, but I just wanted to show you guys exactly what I mean. I'm still trying to think of a way to solve this issue, but it's a real shame because the figure looks so damn good, it's just not as fun to pose. The second issue I have is the wrist peg system. The holes in the hands are a little tight and take a bit of work to get in there, which is fine. More friction means a tighter hold on the sword, but because the pegs are straight and short, the hands come out super easy when you try and swivel them. Again, super annoying since Guts is a sword wielding character who uses his hands and carries a huge sword all the time. I don't know why they didn't just go with a ball peg system, which would have been way more secure, but it is what it is. Again, it really is such a shame that these two problems really detract it from being an enjoyable figure. It looks so damn good, comes with so many options for posing, but it's just not fun to pose. Alright, so let's take a look at the articulation. So I left on the collar piece because it's meant to be on there, but I did take off the cape just because it's going to make my job a little bit easier. But I'm not going to push these shoulder joints too hard. As I mentioned, they do pop out easily, so hopefully nothing's going to break and everything's going to go smoothly during this section of the review. So first up, the head articulation. Guts, with the assistance of that independent neck joint, does move his head up very well. He looks down pretty good as well, and you do get side to side rotation. However, when you try to get his head tilting on an angle, the collar piece does get in the way, but you can still get Guts to kind of tilt his head left and right. For the shoulders, as I mentioned, they do pop out easily, but you do get 360-degree rotation there. The shoulders do move up and down, and you do need that bit of articulation to actually move Guts's arm out 90 degrees. These armor pieces, 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are on ball joints, with this section here on a hinge attached to his shoulder. They do move independently, and they do get out of the way somewhat to give you as much articulation in the arm and shoulder as possible. He does have butterfly joints, and again, I really don't want to push this too much because I know the shoulders are going to pop out, but Guts can bring his arm in. And let's see how far I can push that without it popping out. About that much. So he can hold his sword with both hands. It does take a bit of practice, it does take a bit of patience, but he can do it. You do have upper bicep swivel. And he does have double elbows as well. For his left arm, this section here is an actual separate piece, so it does move freely to some degree. It does have a hinge there. And you do get swivels and hinges at the wrist. The pockets And the pouches on the side here, they are on ball joints. Well, the one on his right waist, the one on his left waist, and the one on his back here, they are on ball joints and they can be removed. However, do not remove the one on his back that is supposed to hold, I guess, the grip section of his crossbow. That snapped off. Don't try that. It doesn't come out. For his torso articulation, it isn't a ball joint, so he does get pretty good range there. For his mid-torso, he can crunch forward a decent amount. It's not the best, but he does get back really good. So yeah, it's decent. We get swivels in the midsection there, and we do get side to side tilt as well. So the upper half, pretty good, just watch the shoulders. For his leg articulation, you just got to tuck the armor in, and the armor actually is on his legs and in his torso a softer plastic, so you do get a bit of flex to it. And I'm trying to tuck the armor underneath the crotch piece there, so he does get a relatively good split side to side. Not too much kicking back, but, you know, decent enough kicking forward. Just be careful. Same can be said for his left leg. You do have an upper thigh cut, double knees. There is a swivel there at the ankles. The feet go down really well. Great for those jumping poses. And they go up really nicely as well. And what I like about this is that they've sculpted in the back of the foot there. So it isn't just a joint. It's sculpted in and it looks good. You get your toe hinge. And you also get really good ankle pivot as well. So again, all in all, besides those crappy shoulder joints and I guess the short pegged wrist system, everything else works pretty well, considering, you know, how complicated the armor is, you know, considering all of the pouches and pockets that kind of hinder, or that would hinder most of the articulation around his body and around his legs. He's got pretty good articulation. He can hold his sword with both hands. It's just those shoulder joints. Everything else works great. For accessories, Guts comes with a literal arsenal of hands, weapons, arm attachments, and more. We get 3 sets of hands for each arm, with a set of fists, a pair of sword-wielding hands, and a set of open palms. In addition to his hands, we also get his crossbow arm attachment, which is hinged both at the base and at the handle, so you can get Guts to hold the handle as if he was firing it. You can also swap it out for his arm cannon, which has a hinged hand already in place. When Guts isn't using his mechanical arm attachment, you can store the handle half of the crossbow in Guts' back pouch, which he slings around his shoulder. It just slides nicely in there. So as I was shooting my review, I broke the pouch which carries the handle area of the crossbow. Not a real biggie for me since it's hidden behind the cape most of the time. I was trying to see if there was any way to attach the sword to the back, and when trying to remove the pouch, it snapped off. Don't try what I did, it doesn't come out, you'll just end up with a pouchless Guts figure. We also get a knife and sheath, which attaches on the front of his belt via a ball joint. Guts also comes with a creepy ass green behelit. Just look at this thing, the whole moving eyes and mouth and nose thing always kind of freaked me out. And where would Guts be without his trusty Dragon Slayer? It's a massive piece of plastic and has a bit of weight to it, but Guts can still hold it pretty securely. When the crappy ass shoulder joints aren't falling apart on you, Guts can actually hold the hilt with both hands, with the butt of the sword being a removable piece. But unfortunately, there isn't a place to store the sword on his back without some customizing, which I'm sure someone out there will figure out some clever way to do. But right out of the box, there's no way to store the Dragon Slayer on Guts' back. For now, I found that if you rotate the shoulders in the opposite direction, it won't pop out as easily, so that might be a temporary fix until I find the right screws. Like I said, the figure is a work of art, and you can tell that so much love and attention to detail went into the sculpt of the figure. It's an amazing display piece, and if you have the patience, poses very well considering all the armor and extra attachments that would get in the way. The accessories gives you plenty of options, and this is one of the best cloth capes Figuarts have ever done in the history of producing cloth goods. I'm also really looking forward to Griffith. I'm sure that figure would have been a challenge for Tamashii as well, but I can't wait to get it in hand. I know it's going to be another gorgeous piece, especially with the beautiful armor and horse. Tamashii put out pre-orders for Guts in his full Berserker Armor yesterday, which will see a release early next year, and so far it's shaping up to be a very impressive piece. Just put a little bit more time into working out those joints. That's the only thing holding these little beauties back. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review. I'd love to see Tamashii give us more characters from Berserk, but let us know what you want to see next. Zod would be insane. Alright guys, I'll see you all real soon. Remember, you can support the channel by picking up a Yoroshiku t-shirt or hoodie from Teespring. Show some love by clicking the like button. But until next time, Yoroshiku!